with PAREA, you do have a mentor that's kind of helping you through each step with different assignments.
It's, I think, important for people coming into the career to know what it takes to be successful, not just, in the PAREA program or a trainer, a trainee program, but
having a license, have an employee with a license is way more valuable than someone with a trainee license. Episode 10 of our mini-series, Market Moves with Mark and Jeff, covering PAREA. We have gone over the ins and outs of this new innovative and bold program. We've interviewed students. We've talked to the stakeholders that had conceptualized this from the beginning. And we'll be finishing today with a conversation with the lead mentor in the PAREA program for the Appraisal Institute, kind of talking about what it's like to get in, what people are looking like coming out, and how best to be prepared coming into it. This has been a really, really good in-depth dive in the subject, and we look forward to this conversation here with Dana Thornberry. All right. Well, with us today, we have Dana Thornberry, MAISRA. Hello, Dana. Welcome in.
Hello.
Very, very excited to have you. We've had this concept of having you on this on an episode here since the beginning of this launch. So it's really good to finally get you on. So we're happy to have you. You are the team lead for the mentors in AI PAREA. That correct?
That is correct.
Well, wonderful. I'd like to hear a little bit about your appraisal career. As we were sort of prepping for the show, you were telling me a little bit about it. You've been doing this a long time.
I have. I was an appraiser for over 30 years. I started in Louisville, Kentucky, and one of the guys I was dating, his dad was an appraiser, and he said, I just need somebody to take pictures. And I'm like, I can do that. Here we are 30 something years later. So it's been a great career. Once again, just lots of broad experience. And I was always adamant with other appraisers to diversify. I was an instructor for the Appraisal Institute for over 12 years before I took this position. So I've had a lot of interaction with the Appraisal Institute over my 30 years.
What kind of work were you doing? It looked like maybe I was seeing some eminent domain work.
Yes, I did some right-of-way work. I did a lot of litigation, a lot of divorce work, mortgage work, a lot of appraisal work for if someone was going to put their house on the market. I measured houses for realtors. So I did residential up to commercial, just a broad range, industrial, so I was very lucky in that respect, to have a broad-based career.
So Dana, Jeff and I are both got into this business through our dads. So we are second-generation appraisers.
Yeah.
You maybe not direct family, but I would put it in the bucket of familial kind of link to the industry and training within it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it seems like that, and that almost seems to be how everyone has been able to get into the industry before. Has that been your experience?
Oh yeah, I mean that's kind of the downs. I mean the down and the upside to our business. If you don't know somebody or you don't have a connection, then it's very difficult to get into this business. I had one of my participants said he reached out to over 400 people, 400 appraisers, and finally one of the ladies told him about PAREA. And so that's how he was able to get into the program and find out about it. So he was one of our pilot participants. But it's a very difficult business to get into.
Boy, I think that must be a record of how many failed reach outs it took somebody to, and even then that didn't result in a mentorship. It was just, oh, by the way, there's this other thing you ought to look into.
Exactly. And he was a math guy, so therefore he knew how many people he contacted.
He was keeping track. Well, yeah, and obviously that's one of the challenges that this whole program has been designed to address is that barrier to entry of if you can't find somebody, don't happen to know, be related to, dating or whatever, like
Right.
it's just hard to get in if there's not a connection, at least until, until this and until PAREA. And we'll talk about some of those, particulars. I am kind of curious, Dana. So you had this career as an appraiser. Now you're in this role, as the team lead for the mentors in the PAREA program. Tell us just a little bit about what that looked like moving into this role with the Appraisal Institute.
Well, initially it was going to be a volunteer position, so I volunteered to be a mentor and help out. Just getting into the seasoned stage of my career, I thought I would give back. I wasn't willing to commit on a full-time basis just because whatever. Um, so anyway, and then the Appraisal Institute decided that it needed to be full-time and a commitment with controls, and we have AQB requirements, and there's all kinds of stipulations and we want the guidance to be consistent. So that's the primary reason. So it was a big decision to give up my business and my career. And so anyway, did that. And it's been amazing. I mean, it's the mentor team that we have. We have Bruce, Brianna, Alan and Sarah that are just amazing. They're a great team. They care so much that sometimes I have to say, okay, you all need to stop working, quit reviewing and go home and take a breather. And but they're just wonderful at guidance and documents. And, we have such a great team, and they really do care a lot about the participants and their progress. So it's just such a great program to give these people an opportunity, from all walks of life. We have college students to retirees, and it's just it's to have that. And that's the main reason the initial reason I signed up, for it to be something new for our profession, to get people into the profession was just, I just felt like it was a great tool.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it wasn't intentional, but probably worked out well, that it started out as a volunteer thing. So naturally, those coming at it with that desire to volunteer, to give back, are the ones that have ended up being the mentors. And I can understand with a new program, kind of evolving and realizing, hey, the volunteer thing isn't going to work. We're going to have to hire full time. But those that came at it with that volunteer mentality, it sounds like are filling the role really well.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So as you're seeing this, I'm curious about your perspective on PAREA as a pathway to become certified, just contrasted against the traditional supervisor trainee model. What's your perspective on what you're seeing as far as how those two pathways compare?
Honestly, I think PAREA gives them a broader base, a broader knowledge base to take forward, because we have, vacant land, 2 to 4 unit, single unit condos. So, there's a lot of appraisers out there that just don't do condos at all. I mean, when I first started, and I was known as the condo queen in Louisville, because several of the appraisers just hated them and wouldn't do them. And I did them everywhere, loved them. So if your supervisor is strictly a residential URAR, UAD, then you're limited to that knowledge. So I think with PAREA, they are given so many tools, spreadsheets to support gross living area adjustments, paired data analysis. A lot of appraisers are like, you can't do paired data. Well, you can if you really look for it. It's hard work, yes. You can do linear regression. You can do sensitivity analysis. There's so many tools out there that a lot of appraisers don't really use. They just pick up Bob's list that says an adjustment for a half bath is $2,500. Doesn't matter what the price range is. Doesn't matter that the cost has gone up. Doesn't matter, what the contributory value is based on that location or that, so we try. And I think that's one of the tools with the different locations, is to make appraisers understand that there's different adjustments for different price ranges, different locations, what's important to buyers in that market. And so I think when you're focused on one county or one area, you don't really get that broad base. So in that respect, I think PAREA gives that bonus. you know, that they can go in any market. They can go to the rural market next to them and use the tools that they've learned in PAREA and research sales and, you know, understand the market and know what they need to do to get there. And as well, you know, the other side is, you know, we, as far as, you know, and I don't, and I always say this in any profession, you know, there's bad plumbers and there's good plumbers.
Sure.
So there's bad appraisers, there's good appraisers.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to, with additional training, you know, eliminate the bad appraisers that are not eliminate, but, you know, provide support, you know, provide support for your site value. Don't just say it's 30,000 and don't explain why. So that's one of the, you know, the advantages. Now, do you get the supervisor that's going to take you out in the field and measure the house? No. We do have the immersives where they can do that. You know, we're hoping that that's kind of a PAREA an AI chapter thing that, you know, they can reach out to local appraisers and local appraisers will say, hey, come on, you know, go with me, measure a house. Let's do this, you know, just to kind of get a feel for it. You know, I mean, in my career, when we went from tape measure to disto, you know, one of the older guys was like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm like, come on, just come on with me one time, you know, one time and you will be hooked. And, you know, he did. So, I mean, and that's part of the appraisal. You know, I was very lucky in my community. We had, you know, 8 to 10 of us that collaborated and we just talked, you know, and years ago we would meet every Saturday to exchange sale, or once a month on a Saturday to exchange sales. And I think that's one thing that a lot of appraisers don't do. They don't get out and socialize and they don't talk to other appraisers. And, you know, everybody's afraid you're going to steal one assignment with them from, or whatever. But so I think from a traditional, go back to the traditional versus the PAREA, you know, with PAREA, you do have a mentor that's kind of helping you through each step with different assignments versus the traditional supervisor. You know, are they there 100% all the time? Right. Likely not. You know, they're trying to run a business. They have 5 other people, you know, so there's advantages and disadvantages to both.
You know, Dana, I think we all of us people, you know, when something new is coming up, we focus on what that new thing isn't doing that the old way is, right? And we really dwell on that. And I think you are highlighting a whole bunch of ways. What Jeff and I have said is that, you know, PAREA is absolutely better training than the average. There's no doubt about that, you know, and minus all of the, you know, even including all of the things that don't get done, like the field, you know, hand holding on site. So this is, and it is far more thorough. And, you know, you have just, you've got a career as an educator in appraisal, right? Beyond actually being a practitioner. And, you know, that isn't most. In fact, it's far from what most have. They just don't have they're not equipped. Their experience doesn't equip them with the same level of education. So there's so much room for this pathway to lift up the training. And I think we see that early on with the 2 students, graduates that we interviewed here recently and the others coming out, that it really feels like that opportunity is there. It leaves some things we've got to address that the old way does address. And we've got to, I think we've got to learn and iterate once we learn from that or see what those things are. So that's wonderful. So if we shift gears a little bit to the student that comes in, you know, I've heard a lot of story and discussion about the preparedness of the student coming in. In fact, when you sign up for AI PAREA, there is a readiness checklist. Beyond that checklist, or maybe the checklist covers that, what have you found best prepares a student coming into PAREA?
We have, you know, and that's been one of the growing pains with PAREA, understanding, you know, how the participants are coming into it and their expectations and how we can meet or we just cannot meet those expectations. We have recently put a document on the PAREA FAQs entitled Prepare for a Successful Adventure with AI PAREA to let the participants know this is what you need. You need to understand, you need to have some beginner level with Excel. Now, to your point of traditional model versus PAREA, my traditional model, we never talked about Excel. We never looked at analysis of sales and importing sales from MLS and what you do. That was never a discussion. So with PAREA, I feel like it's starting out initially with higher requirements. Understand, part of that is understanding the research skills. I had a discussion had a meeting this morning at 8:00 with one of my participants, and, she said, well, MLS says this and assessor says this. And, so what do I do? Well, that's part of it. We've had participants get frustrated. Well, it doesn't all match. Well, no, it won't.
Yeah.
That's your job. That's what they're paying you to research. So I think maybe by the participants reading that information and hopefully understanding that they are responsible for their narrative writing skills. They are responsible for form filling, reviewing, understand, knowing USPAP and understanding what has to be in that report. So there is a level of commitment that I think several initial participants that have since left our program that they didn't understand. This isn't part-time. We thought it could be. It can be part-time. I won't say it won't be, but we have had to change. The initial model was you do it at your own pace. We figured out that unless adult learners are given guidelines, sometimes they do nothing. It's like appraisers. If we know the deadline's Friday, Thursday night, we're huffing and puffing to get it done. So we've had to implement minimum progress guidelines, maximum guidance, because there's certain people, and as you know, having trainees, you can tell one trainee how to do something one time, they take it and run with it. You might have another trainee that you tell them 6 times and they're still not doing it correctly. So, or remotely correctly. So, we've had to step back and understand more of how they're coming into the program and their expectations and what we can do to kind of bring everything together so that everybody's on the same page.
Well, it sounds great that you guys are learning a little bit how to move folks along and make sure they don't get stagnant within the program. I think one thing that appraisers generally take for granted, because a lot of times this comes natural for us, or we had a mentor pushing us along, but this is a very self-starter, sort of self-driven thing. And the 2 graduates that we interviewed, boy, you could see that. That of course they were the first 2 that finished, or among the first 2 or first few that finished. But we always get up at 4 a.m. before I go to my vice principal job, or I'm treating this like a full-time job, getting this thing done and trying to hammer through. And that's a story for a lot of folks. Whether their sacrifice was different, but there is sacrifice to get this done for sure. And there's a lot of initiatives to introduce our industry to a lot of people. And I feel like sometimes that component, I wasn't even sure that it would be necessary, but I'm seeing very quickly that it is, that we aren't selling or we aren't telling the story that to do this, you are going to have to be sacrificial in how you look at this and very, very driven independently to get through it, because it's hard to do.
Right. And contrasting the difference, with Pedro, he was amazing in his commitment. Him and I, we might communicate 2 to 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. We might be on a meeting at 5:30 in the morning, my time, before he would go to teach. We might, 6 o'clock after one of his kids' ball games, so it just depended on, and his level of commitment made me commit to him stronger. Yeah. I wanted to be there for him. Versus we've had one of our other participants was booking meetings every week and just wanted the mentor to read the slides to them and tell them what to put in just step by step by step. That is not what we're here for. We are not here. And a regular supervisor will not do that. They're not going to handhold you. If you are not self-motivated, this is not the program for you.
Yeah.
And appraising, to your point, Mark, is not for you. Appraising, you have to be self-motivated. Yeah. This is typically a commission basis, position. And if you don't do appraisals, you don't get them out the door, you don't make money. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was exactly my thought too, Dana, is that it just, it's, I think, important for people coming into the career to know what it takes to be successful, not just, in the PAREA program or a trainer, a trainee program, but it especially in the fee world where you're working as an independent appraiser and are contingent on, being productive. It really is the self-starters that seem to be most successful. I think Mark and I have observed that those that have some experience in a competitive background, whether it's, sports or something related to that, seems to be a good indicator of somebody who, has that competitive drive or that kind of self-starter capacity that's needed. And it certainly was, manifest in Pedro and Chris on their willingness to just, take this on as, I'm going to do it. In fact, it was kind of fun. They were telling us a little bit of how they were a bit competitive at the end, trying to see who could finish first. And
they were.
it was fun
like,
to see.
Am I still in the lead? Am I still in the lead? I'm like, oh, no, you're not. Darn, but he had a setback. He got sick and had a little bit of a setback.
Yeah, and life happens. That does for any of us.
Right.
But
that's right, and that's what we try to take that into account. That life does happen, but it's funny you mentioned that. To your point with teams, myself and two other girls that I played ball with in high school all three of us were appraisers. One is already retired. She's my hero, but so, from a small town, to your point, that is self-motivated, and we all, one kind of came along my path, but the other one was just another path. But to your point, I think you're right in that, you have to be able to communicate with clients. You have to have that teamwork, mentality. There are a lot of individual, because you work on your own. So you do have to be somewhat internal. I can't think of the word, but you also, in order to get clients and keep clients, you have to have that external sales or, motivation mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to connect with people and provide good service, and have you be somebody that they actually want to work with, absolutely right. You're in kind of a unique but fun position, I think, Dana, to share a little bit of perspective on how you've seen those so far that you've worked within the program kind of grow and develop through the program. Any of us that have worked with trainees, the day one, most of them come in not knowing much. And frankly, the ones that have some level of experience are maybe even harder if you have to reprogram things that they think they knew from selling real estate or building or contracting or something. So you get a whole range of experience coming into it. But tell us a little bit about your perspective and just seeing these individuals you've worked with kind of grow and enhance and develop those skills through this program.
Yeah, Jeff, I think, talking about the realtors, sometimes it's you have to shift them from marketing to facts. That's one of the major differences between our businesses. They're similar, but they're not. That's some training. That's a growth aspect. One of our, and on the other side, the background of being a realtor, one of our fastest, she went through in like 5.5 months, everything, level 1, level 2, final assignments, flew through it. She's an investor. She's a licensed realtor. She just absorbed everything. And she had that huge commitment level like Pedro did. She was working on it on weekends, mornings, nights, and we were back and forth with everything. So her growth level from a matter of 5.5 months was just amazing. She just went from, okay, what do I do here? And, how do I do this? And how, so her aptitude, her willingness to learn was just amazing. And so she was able to get through the program that quickly. Now we've had other realtors that have hit the door and it's like, oh, this is hard. I can't do this much paperwork. You all really do. They're used to seeing appraisers at the site for 20 minutes and then they get paid whatever. I'm not going to quote fees, but they get paid whatever. And so they were like, oh, this has to be easy, So we have had several realtors and mortgage brokers leave the program because they did not realize how much involvement there is in supporting the numbers and everything in an appraisal.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, I was just talking with a trainee that we had hired, had actually come out and done some training here on site with me, and now 18 months, maybe 24 months later, he's a newly certified appraiser, working in Texas. And he was just reminiscing about, man, I remember those first couple of days. Like it took me an hour plus on site trying to figure out how to close a sketch and get all the information I need, even just for that part of it, let alone doing the analysis. And he's like, now, I'm in and out pretty quick because I've done it a whole bunch of times and I've learned a lot. And it's just fun to see that progress as they enter a program knowing very little and then become proficient over time.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I remember the first house I measured, I had to go back 3 times. I was so embarrassed. I felt awful. The guy was so nice and so wonderful, but and one of my students one year told me, I think she was from Alaska. She's hilarious, but she said, my supervisor told me, butt to the front. And I'm like, you don't know how many times I have used that. Even as a seasoned appraiser, I'm like, you get turned around in a 8,000 square foot house and you're like, okay. So sometimes that's the most challenging part is to get the inspection done and get it back and make sure your measurements and everything are correct. So yeah, it's nice to see growth from that perspective.
Absolutely. Well, so a question, Dana, that I think everybody gets on their mind as someone graduates from PAREA is, are they ready? Are we sending people out that can get a license pretty quickly? And so it's what is your experience? What is your perspective on folks that are coming out here? And then secondly, what do you think you would do upon graduation from PAREA if you were a graduate?
First, on the first question, as far as what we're seeing, the first 3 that took their certified exam have passed. So that's a huge percentage. We know the pass rates are not high right now for these exams. So we're very, very proud of that. We have several right now that are studying for their exam. And so hopefully they will be just as prepared. But I think that... What
are the pass rates? 50, 60%? I'm sorry to cut you off.
Like 50. Yeah, I think it is like 50, 60%.
So you're 100% so far, limited samples.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah.
But
no pressure to those studying, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think there's that level of commitment. They're used to studying. They understand. And we try to help them as a mentor, study this, study that, go back through this practice assignment, go through the knowledge center, look at your education courses. If you took, the AI courses, then go through all your all the practice quizzes. This will prepare you to take that exam. So I think in that way, PAREA does prepare them to pass that portion.
So they're ready for the exam. How ready are they for the real world appraisal?
The real world, are they prepared 100%? And the answer is no. The typical trainee supervisor model. Are they prepared? Jeff, the guy you just talked about, can he go out tomorrow, open up his door and know everything? No, he can't. And Pedro and I talked about this. How do you prepare? Go out and talk to realtors, talk to bankers that, go to open houses. What's the demand? What's missing out there? Talk to attorneys, and attorneys sometimes with a new appraiser, and I told him, I said, that's going to be, you need to gain some experience before an attorney's likely going to let you in the door, but getting your name in front of them is never a bad thing, So we have had, we are starting to have appraisers reach out to wanting to hire PAREA graduates. So that's a great option. We're trying to figure out the best channel. How do we go about putting that information out there, because obviously, we don't know every appraiser that's going to reach out to us. We don't know, so that's something as a PAREA participant, as an employee of another company, they're going to have to make that decision for themselves, whether they want to work for someone. And several of them, I think, will go that route, just like Chris did. He went that route. So it just depends on where you are. And, I have one participant that just graduated, and he is opening up his own business. That's the decision. He's in a rural location, very few appraisers around him. And, which was so funny. I taught with another gentleman, and they were from the same state, large state. And I thought, well, you never know. But very helpful. So I said, look, you're welcome to call me, or here's his cell phone number. Call him, reach out, and just kind of make that connection within your state so that you have another appraiser that you can rely on. He called me back. He said, you're not going to believe this. The guy lives 15 minutes from me. He knows my parents,
Wow.
He goes, he's a great guy, great resource. And I'm like, there you go. You just never know. Yeah. So I think he's going to be able to give him some guidance as far as, local state guidance. And that's what I think is going to be the important tool for them to do, is to reach out to other appraisers, and to reach out to the chapters, get involved. Now, is everybody going to be that welcoming? We know how the appraisal business works. No, but there are people out there. There are other appraisers that are willing to help,
You bet. I do. One of the learnings, as Jeff and I have kind of gone into this study of PAREA, doing this podcast, is thinking through the what ultimately I think will end up being demand for PAREA graduates by employers of appraisers. It's having a license. Have an employee with a license is way more valuable than someone with a trainee license. It's just, you can use them so much more deeply in your practice. And, we are not in a hiring market right now. I think Mr. Powell is speaking today and may start to change that for us a little bit. But I do think there will end up being quite a bit of demand for folks graduating from this.
I do think so. And coming, not having to make that commitment as a supervisor would have been amazing for me, because that was the commitment I could not make. I could not give that time to a trainee. But if I had a licensed appraiser coming to me ready to go, that had some background and had some knowledge, where I didn't have to explain highest and best use every day of my life, which is hard sometimes. Luckily I was an instructor for 10 to 12 years, but it's, I have to sometimes step back and say, this is only their second appraisal. Yeah. They don't understand everything. So it is necessarily, that we put ourselves as mentors, in that perspective every day. But, there's so many different career paths with having that appraiser's license. Once you have it, there's just all kinds of options.
Boy, yeah, there really are. And like you say, I think one of the benefits of the program is the focus on the teaching and the learning of the the practical applications. It's almost as though they knew what they were doing when they named it,
Amazing.
Exactly. But that's one of the things I've seen so consistently, is those that struggle are typically those that have had a supervisor that's known one way how to do it. They've just done it that way. They plug them into, this is the one way to do it. And either they don't have the skill set, the time, or the willingness to learn how to support adjustments. I've served on our state board for almost 8 years now, and many get good training. So I don't tell these stories, to imply that all supervisors are bad, because that's definitely not the case. The ones that come and talk to the board are the ones that are struggling for various reasons. And usually it's because a trainee gets plugged into here's how you do it. It's kind of like you mentioned, the Bob's list of adjustments, they've just always done it this way. So that must be good enough. And my supervisor still has a license, so it must work.
Right.
But it's hard because they don't have the skill set or the willingness to learn how to dive in and do the analysis, that probably ought to be done in the first place, or the skill set to teach and convey that. And that's one of the main differences I see in PAREA is there's the focus in learning how to learn a market, and then they're going to have to learn a market, wherever they're at. But that's one of the, I think, complementary things that I'm seeing so far is those that we've talked to, whether they work for another appraiser or a firm or whatever, or they go out on their own, they have some connections, whether it's through the Institute chapters or other appraisers they've reached out to. There are appraiser coalitions in a lot of states that are willing to at least collaborate at some level. And so I think you mentioned, when you first got licensed or certified, I remember the first ones, you sign on your own without the supervisor there, making sure you didn't mess anything up. And that's kind of a sobering moment to send that thing
Yeah.
out. And that's only my name on this thing. I hope I didn't miss something that my supervisor catches,
Exactly. And a
But
little scary sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, for any of us that are new in the profession, you're not a 20-year seasoned professional, obviously, and regardless of your path to come into the profession. So I think your observations are very consistent with what we're seeing as far as, it does take time. It does take experience. I don't see PAREA as being an inferior way to come into the profession. And it certainly has some of the strengths that that you've talked about and that we've addressed. There are some things where, skills will need to be augmented. And that's the case for any of us as newly certified professionals. So with that, I'm curious, Dana, what's your perspective as we maybe step back and kind of look at the state of the AI PAREA program, where it's at? Are there things that you see either a need for change for, or maybe in an ideal world that you'd love to see, iterations going forward? I'm not asking obviously about, proprietary secrets, but just from a practical standpoint, anything that you see as, maybe next steps that would be beneficial for the program?
Yeah, Jeff, honestly, it's daily. I mean, I'm working on improving the practice assignments myself and the team. We have Ray and Chelsea, Ray Martinez and Chelsea Bishop that back us up, and they are just amazing. Ray is all our technical side. Sharon, my supervisor, is, basically big picture and what can we do to improve the entire program. One thing that has just really helped us is adding videos for training. And Bruce has just been amazing. We're just like, oh, you're it. We all just kind of back up and go, you do the videos. So this helps the mentors and the participants. They can watch the videos as many times as they need to. That gives them more direction than, some people learn better from videos versus the written guidance. So we are starting to add more of that. We're thinking about using the program for other options and guidance for the participants. There's things that we can potentially use the program for in other avenues. Our primary focus is still trying to bridge that gap between QE and this experience. There's various levels of what education that they bring to the program. Some are better prepared than others. And we all know everybody gets something different out of a class. We talked about, the FAQs. I think if you're going to sign up for the PAREA program, definitely read those FAQs, find out if you're prepared, find out what you need to have. We are entertaining guest lectures, study groups, more AI chapter involvement with PAREA participants, career coaching. We just have, we're not up to 10 graduates yet. So we're trying to decide, where do we go with that? Where do we go with career coaching and employment opportunities? Now, the career coaching, that's kind of something that the mentors do from day one. That's part of the program. You'll need this, or reach out to this person, or, whatever. It's a constant, because all of us have 30 plus years in the business. We have appraisers that have run their own business, all three of us. We have the other two most recently came from bank review positions, Alan and Sarah. So they provide that background and that career guidance to the participants. So that's something that we constantly do, but it's not a formal process at the end just yet. Still we continue to, we're working on scholarships, more scholarships, collaborations with our diversity initiatives, community colleges, large firms, anything we can do to reach out and expand, the ability for not participants, for a diverse range of people to come to the program and the profession.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm starting to hear some, saying, hey, I like this PAREA option, but I'm on the wait list and it's taking a while to get in, which frankly are good problems to have. We obviously want to avoid that becoming the same problem that the supervisor, issue creates. Do you have any perspective on like expanding capacity or scaling the program from AI's perspective?
Yes, we are going to open up here, and then our plan is in the next 15 days.
Oh, wow.
Now, we will monitor how many, because we only have a capacity of 4 mentors and myself, and I do mentoring as well still. And a lot of that, it keeps me close to the assignments. It keeps me close to the participants and the mentors as well, so that, we're all learning. So we are planning on opening up. We've had to step back and improve the program, implement the minimum progress requirements, things like that. So some issues like that have been the reason for the wait list.
Fantastic.
Well, that makes sense, and it certainly wasn't intended to be critical. I know that it's an attractive program for those that can't find a supervisor. Mark and I ran some numbers, and on the other side of the equation, we hear appraisers saying, well, PAREA is going to bring in this wave of new appraisers are going to take all of the jobs and stuff. And we're saying the numbers don't bear that out, knowing how many are, doing residential work and commercial and stuff. But that's helpful perspective.
Right. And we just don't, we would love to have the capacity, but the program's still growing. So hopefully one day we will, but, are we going to push 1,000 appraisers out every year? Right now that's just not possible.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dana, your passion for PAREA and for seeing new folks getting into the industry properly really shines through here. I can see the pride. I can see the fondness you have for the students that you work with. And I can only imagine that each of the mentors that are doing this have the same level of passion and care. So I think it's really great what you and the Appraisal Institute is bringing here and doing for these folks, giving them a pathway to get in. Any last thoughts about the program as a whole as we close out here from your perspective?
I think, to your point, it's taken a lot of people, behind the scenes to get us to this point. Sandy's been such a great supporter and an initial supporter of this program. Stephen Wagner was very involved in getting this program going. I mean, we've had so many people that have, contributed so much, and so many appraisers that care so much to get a new option out there for appraisers to get into this business. I mean, I just feel very lucky to be here and have the support that I do to get the program improved and moving forward, and hoping that there's a long-term solution for appraisers coming into our business.
Well, Dana, thank you for taking the time to do this. This is a real nice cap to our deep dive in PAREA. So thank you for the time and for all you're doing for the profession.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mark and Jeff. We appreciate as well everything you all have done to bring PAREA out, and plus have enjoyable podcasts.
Our second fan. That's amazing. We appreciate it.
One more like.
There you go.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dana. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
A good discussion with Dana. I felt like getting a much deeper feeling of sort of what it's like. Who are the people that you're interacting with in the program? It's always, with all the technology and whatnot, it's always the people that make up the process, and sort of an additional layer of comfort I think I get from talking to Dana and hearing her vast experience, and then how she's interacting with these students during and leading to prepared graduates and ultimately prepared appraisers. So this is the 10th episode where we have set out to cover a very niche topic. It's you and I's first foray in a podcast. And, I've heard people say this before, but preparing for and doing these podcasts is a great way to kind of lead yourself through study of a topic. And, PAREA was a very niche topic. I know you and I discussed early on whether or not it was too niche, but we were passionate about it and really wanted to learn more and excited about the good that could come out of it in the midst of a lot of skepticism. And so 10 episodes in, we've talked to a lot of folks, and I've really, I think this a confidence in the program that it is a right direction feels like where I land in looking at it and its place within the profession. I think it addresses one of the biggest problems in the profession, which is this blocking of new folks getting in, usually unless you have some sort of familial or close-knit connection to get in. And it's not how this should be. It's not how any industry should be. We want the best and the brightest that want to do it, not just those that are connected close to it. And I think this accomplishes that. And it creates several other problems that we don't fully know the extent. Graduates coming out, what are they? Are they fully prepared? What do they need to do? Who do they need to latch on to once they have that license in hand and graduate? But the biggest problem in my mind has been the blocking of folks getting into the industry that want to. So, I am rooting for it. And I think where I had this thought, but I think exploring it and doing this podcast with you and talking to all the different participants in it, you really have developed a place that, these folks coming out with a license are valuable to employers for sure. Your graduates can go work on their own, but I think these folks are really, really valuable to the employers of appraisers because they have that license in hand and then can continue on in training in the real world with that license in hand. It's a much more economical way to bring someone in than it is kind of going through the 18 or 24 months of paying somebody a salary or hourly or whatever it is while training them. So really excited about what we've seen there. Hopeful that episode 10 here and sort of a closure of this PAREA mini series is not the last time we'll be talking about PAREA. Certainly not. That we'll have a lot of updates in podcasts talking about updates as they come. But I've really enjoyed this in-depth research and discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun to learn, and I think you set that up well or explained it well, that as you commit yourself to talking about a topic in a podcast format where other people are going to listen to you, it kind of obligates you to, do some homework to learn more about it. But with you, it's been fun to get not just your perspective and mine, but those that have been around from its conception, initially through its execution. And that's what I'm seeing is that so many have some connection in the appraisal space, but they can't find the supervisor. And both Chris and Pedro had connections to appraisers, but for various reasons, they couldn't take them on as supervisors, didn't have enough work, didn't have enough time in the profession to supervise, whatever it is. But they still have someone that they are choosing to connect with, kind of post PAREA and licensure. And there's a lot of professional development and growth that needs to take place once somebody's got a license. And I think Dana's perspective on that was valuable, that's the case for anybody, regardless of whether you work with a supervisor or, go through PAREA or, the practicum that we just looked at. Professional growth and development should be the objective of any appraiser throughout their entire career and not just assume that a year or two in, they've got it all figured out. And so, that part will continue, but it has been a lot of fun diving into this topic specifically. Hot off the press, I've referenced my brother a time or two who manages just a local office. We've got a cousin who in a rural area and out in the middle of nowhere wants to become an appraiser, he thinks, and so is just getting started down this pathway of taking AI education with a goal of getting into the PAREA program. So it'll be kind of fun to track that. But it's for the exact reason you just laid out, Mark, that my brother's looking at it saying, hey, if you'll take the education, go through the PAREA program, we can start working with you right away, as opposed to trying to figure out how to train somebody from ground zero, knowing nothing about, evaluation and that sort of a thing. And so I think that is what's going to play out with individual appraisers, with small firms, with larger firms, those that go through the program and have that base level of knowledge and understanding, plus the licensed credential to be able to actually do work in the real world, that it'll be a good fit, that they will benefit from that training, and on both sides, the newly certified appraiser and the experienced one that will be working with them. So as we close this out, it's been a lot of fun. We'll certainly have the periodic updates. I think it'll be fun to maybe zoom out a little bit and take on some topics that are more real estate and kind of economic, broad market based as well. We may find some other passion projects to dive into, but it's been a lot of fun. I look forward to continuing the conversations with you. I enjoy, so I appreciate it.
There you go. Well, Appraisal Institute, with the only PAREA out there, find a way. It seems like you're iterating. Find a way to get more people in through this. It seems to be good. We want more Chris and Patriots out there.
Amen to that. Absolutely.
All righty, Jeff. Till next time.
Very good. Thanks, Mark.